Narrator: This is dancing the rice. It's a traditional technique to extract this ancient rice grain from its hull. It's just one of the many steps that members of the Ojibwe tribe perform to savor the grain. Known as Manoomin, meaning the good berry. This type of wild rice has been harvested by the tribe in the Great Lakes region of North America for centuries. A pound of it can sell for $24, 15 times as much as white rice. For the Ojibwe people, harvesting this rice means much more than money. It's a way to connect with their ancestors and pass on their traditions to future generations. But as the rest of the world discovers this ancient grain, the tribe fears that it will lose its importance and that it will be separated from its natural ecosystem. So, what is the meaning of Manoomin, and why is it so expensive? We're heading over to one of our tribal lakes that's on the reservation. This lake is 100% owned by the tribe. People say you can't own the water, but this is a reservation lake. Narrator: While most wild rice on the sow market is cultivated in paddies to ripen all at the same time, Manoomin still follows the natural cycle of the rice plant. This difference has not gone unnoticed, and the grain's popularity has been growing for decades. But for the Ojibwe tribe, Manoomin is sacred. They continue to harvest it by hand, which is one reason it can sell for twice as much as cultivated wild rice. Leland: See, everything has a life, has a spirit. So that's why we offer tobacco to whatever we're doing. Narrator: Leland is the rice, chief of the tribal band here at Mole Lake. It's here that Manoomin grows. Every fall, when the season begins, Leland heads out to the lake with his cousin Chad to harvest the rice. Leland: Right now I'm push-poling Chad. Chad's our picker. I'm the push-poler. We're looking for the rice right now. The poler's job is to look for the rice and put him on the rice so he can pick it. Chad: Looking for the rice on top. Like, right here, you can see there's rice kernels on top, couple of spots. And even if there's nothing there, I'll still grab it and pull it in. Something could fall off. The rice. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Every time you say miigwech, miigwech. Narrator: To harvest the rice, Chad, the knocker, uses a set of wooden sticks to knock the rice directly off the plants into the canoe. As a knocker, Chad is following in the footsteps of his grandfather, who used to harvest Manoomin as well. Chad: I made this set myself the year he passed. And then this set is the set that he made the year before he passed. Makes me feel good. Narrator: As he works, he thanks the plants for today's harvest. Chad: Miigwech, 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 miigwech. Narrator: Saying thanks also dictates a rhythm for picking. Chad: That's the best sound in the world. Narrator: Unlike cultivated rice, Manoomin doesn't all ripen at the same time. So Leland and Chad must set out in the canoe multiple times during the season. Leland: It's small in your hand, but after a while of being out here, it adds up. I mean, we were only out here for an hour, and about a quarter of our boat is covered. Narrator: But what's here on the boat's floor isn't the size of the final harvest. Within this, they'll often find unripe rice and hulls with no rice inside, at all. Leland: Green rice? When we're talking about green rice, it's actually green. Green rice. And this black rice here is ripe. There's years where we get what we call a ghost rice. The ghost rice you'll have the hull of the rice and there'll be nothing in it. It'll be empty. Some stalks don't always grow. Narrator. When Manoomin is sold, it usually sells for around $24 per pound. The price varies depending on the overall harvest, the stock, and the buyer's connections. Leland, you know how people refer to oil as black gold? This is our black gold. Narrator. Now that Leland and Chad are back from the lake, it's time to dry the rice. Depending on how ripe it is, it may need to be soaked overnight. Leland. See, this rice, we didn't really have to get wet last night, just because it's already starting to ripen really good. Narrator. The whole community gets involved. In the drying process, it's a great opportunity for young tribe members to learn from their elders. Air drying is the first step in separating the rice grain from the hulls. Removing the hulls further reduces the size of the overall harvest. But today's trip to the rice beds has been more successful than harvests in recent years. Leland. This year we had some nice grains. It was long. It was fat. So this year, your percentage of rice would be about 80-20. 80% of the grain you'll get. You'll probably lose 20% with the hulls. We're actually converting that rice from a medicine to a food. Whenever that wild rice has moisture or water in it, it still has a life. Narrator. Removing moisture is important for the following step. Parching the rice on a wood fire. It's done in a metal pan with a wooden paddle. Roger. This part is going to be the coolest part of the tub, and this is going to be the hottest part. So you're going to put this up on the fire, and you're going to actually see this actually turn brown as it starts parching. Narrator. If a grain retains too much moisture, it'll pop just like popcorn. But the separation of the grains from their hulls is far from complete. To do that, Roger makes a shallow hole in the ground, pours in the rice, and covers it with deer hide. He then dons a pair of soft buckskin moccasins and thrashes the rice by stepping on it. This step is called dancing the rice, and Roger takes it quite literally. It looks like the twist, but it's the Anishinaabe two-step. I tell everyone, I said, this is how I got my wife of 47 years now. Narrator. The poles he uses are not for balance. He uses them to transfer his weight to avoid breaking the rice. Roger's two-step was successful. Once separated from the grains, the hulls are so lightweight they fly away like dust. And that's exactly how they will be filtered out, by tossing the batch in the air from this birch bark basket. Nowadays, dancing and tossing the rice can also be done by a machine. Leland. Yeah, you got 2, 4, 6, 12 moccasins. 12 feet working at once instead of 2 feet working at once. As it rotates, it's taking the hulls off. You can see that there's long grain. There's some that's a little broken up. That little broken up stuff is good for soup rice. Narrator. Despite this faster method, the tribe places great importance on continuing to dance and toss the rice by hand. Leland. There's elders that always told us to pay attention because someday you're going to be teaching this. As a kid, I just kind of laughed about it and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be that guy. But here I am, teaching everybody what I know. Narrator, but while a good return is important, the tribe doesn't harvest to make a profit. Manoomin. Is only sold when needed. You can't just buy this on Amazon. I'm sure that there are certain individuals that will sell it on the internet. It's all about people who are around here who can make connections with somebody who does this. It's all about those relationships and what price they're willing to give for a pound of rice. Narrator. Manoomin contains 3 times more protein than white rice, more vitamin B than brown rice, and is rich in antioxidants. These values have made it an essential part of the Ojibwe diet for centuries, together with berries, fish, meat, vegetables, and maple sugar. Leland. Yeah, there is many different ways to make rice. You can add wild rice to just about any kind of dish. We have berries with wild rice, walleye cheek chowder with wild rice. Our rice doesn't even compare nutritionally to white rice. Or even, Uncle Ben doesn't even have anything over us. Narrator. Mole Lake is fully owned by the local Ojibwe tribe, which carefully controls the flow of water and monitors its minerals. No motorboats are allowed in the lake, and duck and goose. Hunting is prohibited during the rice-picking season. Wayne. We don't allow lead shot to be used when we shoot the birds because then that settles into the sediment. The plant will uptake that lead. Leland. This is an ancient rice bed. We had rice that was carbon dated to 800 years ago. Narrator. For Leland and Chad, harvesting Manoomin isn't about collecting every last grain of rice from the plants. Not all the rice falls into the canoe, and that's okay. The rice that falls back into the water will reseed the lake for the next season. Leland. We believe that you take what you need, not what you want. Narrator. Over the last 200 years, the ecosystem that supports Manoomin has come increasingly under threat. The tribe was forced to cede lands to the federal government in 1837 and 1842, and even today regularly receives multi-million-dollar offers from different suitors to sell the lake. Wayne. As Manoomin becomes more popular, a lot of non-tribal people who haven't done this, they want to go out and try and do it for themselves. So one of the concerns is that they don't know how to do it, because they can actually destroy a rice bed by, when they're picking, they hit it too hard. They're trying to get everything off of it. Narrator. Although the harvest was good this year, this isn't always the case. Leland. There's been people that would come off the lake daily with 200+ pounds. There are years where you come in with an average of 150 pounds. This year seems to be one of the best. Narrator. Over the past century, the hand-harvested Manoomin habitat has declined by 1/3. Water pollution, oil pipelines, fluctuating water levels, rising temperatures, and invasive fish species are all factors threatening the delicate ecosystem at Mole Lake and other lakes where Manoomin grows. Leland. There are other lakes around here that do have rice, but it's not as big of a grain as what we got, or, it ain't as thick as what we have here on this rice lake. This is the reason we're here, is because of this rice. We fought over this rice to live here. Narrator. What Leland is referring to is the Battle of Mole Lake, a clash between native tribes that killed 500 people in 1806. Leland. People were getting pushed from the east to the west, and Lakota happened to be some of them. Sioux happened to be some of them. We happened to be some of them. But our people just never left, and they weren't going to leave this area, because this is where the spirits told us to stay. Narrator. It's essential that the lake has a constant supply of fresh water to avoid any sediment buildup, which would prevent nutrients from reaching the rice plants. As custodians of the lake, local harvesters do what they can to manage this natural resource. Leland. Yeah, see? This water isn't always at this level. The creek down here, we got a dam in the water that we build every year so we can bring the water up. Narrator. The same grain, but domesticated by farmers and grown in paddies, can now be found at a fraction of the cost and is often mislabeled as wild rice. But for the Ojibwe tribe, naturally grown Manoomin has a value that can't be easily counted in dollars and cents. Wayne. What people know as wild rice is not what we call it. We call it Manoomin, and it's the good seed or the good food. And people say that it's wild, but it was put here for a purpose, for us.